In previous videos, I've talked about the history of Playmates acquiring the Star Trek license in the early 1990s, and I've spoken about the impressive volume of figures that were produced during this time. To date, Playmates has produced the largest assortment of characters ever produced for Star Trek. And they were produced not in just one scale, but three. They had a 5-inch line, a 9-inch line, and a 12-inch line. And they produced characters from all of the different TV shows and different incarnations that had been made at the time. In this advert from 1998, we can see Playmates advertising some of the upcoming figures to whet collectors' appetites. There's some interesting ones on here because we can actually see some prototypes that actually were never made, and some that were released, such as the 12-inch Cisco and Pike, that were not actually Masterpiece editions. And whilst all three lines had their pros and cons, I've always had a particular affection for the 9-inch line. In many ways, these were the Megos of their day. So I thought it would be interesting today to take a look at some of the 9-inch scale figures for the original series, and then see how they compare with their more recent Mego counterparts. So it's worth noting that Playmates actually produced the entire crew for the original series, even including Nurse Chapel, and they even managed to produce variants of these characters in alternate costumes from different episodes through the years. But today I'm just going to focus on the ones that I actually bought from my own collection, which I hope will be enough to give you an indication of what these figures are like. So then, starting off with the good Captain himself, we can see Captain Kirk here in his traditional gold uniform. And I have to say, there's something so incredibly simple about this design that makes it translate so well into toy form. It doesn't matter whether it's Mego, whether it's Playmates, but it always seems to come across incredibly accurate and authentic when it is translated to a toy. And I think part of the charm of this outfit and this design is that it is just so colourful. And so these original series outfits just come across great as toys. They just translate so well. Playmates have done a great job of capturing the little details. So as we can see here, the insignia is just perfect. I think it's incredibly screen accurate, and it's really nicely done. So it's more of a transfer sticker that's just been sort of stuck on to the top there, but it doesn't look like it's ever going to peel. It looks really solid after all these years. So this is a really nice touch. Likewise, the rank insignia there has also been transferred on, and it's sort of like that metallic kind of paint, and it just looks really good, and again, nicely applied without any hint of it peeling off. And the boots are pretty much the same for all the figures in this line, and they've opted to mould the boots into the figure itself. So they're not a rubber piece, they're not something that's put over the foot, they are moulded in there, and then the trousers just slide over them. And again, the tailoring here is really nice, so those cufflinks on the bottom of the trousers look really good. All of the figures in the line use the exact same body mould, they just swap out the heads and the outfits. So I'll just run through the articulation just the once to give you an idea of what to expect. So the head is on a swivel at the top there, so the head can spin 360 degrees. They do have a ball jointed shoulder, which allows the arm to extend up and back, which is great. There is a single jointed elbow, and that's all you get. There is no ab crunch, there's no swivel at the waist, and there's no wrist articulation. There is a hinge at the hips, so it means the legs can kick out to the side, which is great, and of course they can kick forwards and backwards as well. And there is a hinge joint at the knee as well, which allows the knee to bend at 90 degrees. But that's it, there is no swivel at the boot is not articulated in a way, it doesn't hinge or move from side to side. These figures all come with slightly different accessories, but most of them do come with either a phaser, a communicator, whatever this is that Scotty has, I'm not quite sure, some kind of engineering equipment, and of course the tricorder. Now what's unusual about these pieces is that you'll notice they are actually individually painted. Usually what they did with the 9-inch line was mould the piece in one colour and then not paint it. So you might have a phaser that is solid purple or blue or grey or whatever colour they've decided to mould it in, but there would be no paint application whatsoever, and it's something that always let the line down. However, here with the classic line, I think they're appealing more to the adult collector because they've really gone to great pains here to individually paint these. So as you can see, there's gold on the communicator, there's silver on the buttons, the phaser has black and silver applied to it, and most impressive is the tricorder because not only does it have the black and the silver, but it actually also has extra colours in there as well. So how does this Playmate version stack up against the recent Mego release? Well, as you can see, the Mego release is of course only 8 inches, whereas the Playmates is 9, and it actually looks significantly taller than that. And as much as I love the Megos, I have to say when you put them together like this, it's quite clear that the Playmates is the winner really. I think it's just a better body shape, it's just better tailored, it just fits a lot nicer and it just looks a lot sharper I think overall. And likewise, when we compare the head sculpts, I think it's night and day really. Clearly the Playmates one is just a lot better, it's a lot more appealing and I think it's a lot more screen accurate as well. I think Kirk has one of the best likenesses of this line, and I think the overall presentation of him is pretty fantastic. So I think for me he's one of the standouts in the collection, but he's by no means unique because I think this is actually a very high quality series. Moving on to Dr. McCoy, and again we can see that the vibrant blue really sells this toy to me. I just think he's really colourful and really just very charming, and I think he just looks fantastic. Again, having that tricorder there and his communicator, I think it's a really solid, very nicely presented toy. And again, it's nice to see the attention to detail on the insignia, because obviously this is replicating what we see on screen. He's got a slightly different insignia to Kirk because of course his denotes that he is a medical officer. This time I don't think the likeness is as strong. I don't think this closely resembles DeForest Kelley. You can tell it's him, it definitely has a look, but I think the features are maybe a little bit too soft here. He doesn't look quite old enough. Whereas if we contrast him against the recent Mego release, I think that's gone too far the other way. Like he looks too old, it looks too craggy, isn't really a good likeness, I wouldn't say. So I think if you could sort of blend these two and meet in the middle, then you kind of have something much closer to a really strong likeness. Moving on to the Scotty, and I think again this is a really nicely presented figure. The colour red is really vibrant and strong, and I think it's a pretty nicely presented toy all round. As for the likeness this time around, I think this is a stronger, or it's a closer likeness to the actor than we saw with the Bones. It's still not quite as good as the Kirk. I think the features are still a little bit soft, not quite accurate, but pretty decent given the scale. And I think then if we compare that against the recent Mego release, I'm kind of torn because Mego have gone for a lot more detail in the face there, and it's probably a better sculpt, but I'm kind of on the fence with it, to be honest. I'm not sure if I prefer the Playmates overall. Next up we have the Pike figure. I really like that they went to the trouble of actually including this character after having only a very brief and largely unscreened appearance in the show. It's really nice to actually have him in figure form and to actually have him part of the canon. I think is really, really cool. And I think the presentation is really nice. They've captured his look, they've captured his costume. He is obviously a lot more of a muted yellow rather than the bright, vibrant yellow gold that we see with Captain Kirk. If I had a complaint, it would be he doesn't come with his very distinctive phaser or his little blue jacket, which ironically they would include with the 12-inch version, and they're very, very nice additions indeed. So it's a shame that the 9-inch didn't get the same treatment because it would have been a really nice look. Now in terms of the likeness, I have to say I think this is actually the strongest of any of the Star Trek 9-inch figures. Absolutely fantastic. As you can see here, this is really, really accurate, very, very close, almost surprisingly so, to what we see on screen of the actor. So absolutely brilliant, love this. Next up we have the Spock from Where No Man Goes Before, which of course does mean he has the more faded gold top rather than his usual blue that we see in the regular TV show. And again, the figure is very nicely presented, but if I did have a gripe, it would be that he doesn't have a Vulcan salute hand. So he's just like every other figure in the line. He has the exact same body mold. There is no changes, not even to the hand. And I think, you know, this would have been really nice, especially in a Spock. It's really important to make sure that he can make that Vulcan salute. And it's interesting because Mego all these years later will go on to replicate that very same issue and not give Spock the Vulcan salute hand. And here they both are for you to compare the sculpts. Again, I have to say I'm leaning towards the Playmate sculpt. I just think it looks a lot better, a lot closer to what we see on screen. Particularly in the ears, you'll notice they seem a lot more in proportion with his head, whereas one of the issues I have with the Mego release is that his ears just look far, far too big. Now they did release a couple of aliens for this line, which is quite exciting, although sadly not that many. We only managed to get a handful, and aside from the two today, including Trelane here, they only really managed to produce Bele and Edith Keeler. But I think for me the standout one is the Trelane, because I think they've gone to such a lot of effort with this character, and I think they've presented him really, really well. He's bright, he's colourful, and he's very, very well tailored. There's absolutely tons of little nice details, and he's got lots of different textures to him, which is really fun and quite toyetic. So of course he does have his frilly lace cravat there. He's got his medals, which admittedly are a little bit overly simplistic. But I do love the gold trim going down the front of his jacket there and dotted all around his pockets and his belt and his cufflinks. I think it's really, really nice. It's very shiny, shows up really well on camera when the light shone on it. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. And it just gives it a lot more texture. And it contrasts really nicely against the velvet effect material that they've given him for his coat. And that feels very, very nice to the touch as well. Once again, his boots are moulded into the figure, but you'll notice these are high boots, so this is a brand new sculpt and very nicely presented. And it's also nice that they've bothered to paint his legs green so that when the trousers don't quite meet them, it doesn't look really obvious and it doesn't look really silly. So, top marks. And another nice touch is that underneath his coat, you will see he has a gold tunic. Again, it's just an extra little touch there, which I think is really nice and just layers the figure up. Plus, I think this likeness is very, very strong. Again, I think this is another winner here. And yeah, very nicely done. Well painted and screen accurate. Fantastic stuff. And finally, I have the Talosian. As a kid, I always thought the Talosians were really, really creepy and kind of scary with their powers. And in many ways, they were the first Star Trek villain. So it's really nice to have them represented here in this scale. And the design is very simple and it's translated perfectly once again into the toy form. So this looks really solid, looks spot on, and yeah, it's very, very effective. I'm not sure if this sculpt is meant to represent any particular Talosian. We do see 3 in the cage. This could pretty much be any of them really, so I think it's meant to be a more generic look. And again, you could buy an extra 2 and have them all standing next to each other to create that sort of triumvirate. But I think this is a really solid sculpt, very creepy. I love that they've bothered to paint the veins in the head there just to make that really pronounced. And yeah, I think it's really, really good. So overall, I have to say I have a lot of love for this line. I think it's really, really fun. I think the colours are bright. I think the figures are pretty strong in terms of their likeness. Their accessories are great. And overall, the line is just simple, colourful fun. That's kind of how it should be, and I think that fairly sums up the original series as well. And I think we have to give credit to the original designers of the original show because, you know, they managed to create a look and a design and a feel that was so applicable all these years later, and it always looks good no matter what toy line you put them in. It always looks fun and inviting. I hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe as I'll be posting more videos soon.